Welcome back. If you're just joining us, you're watching The Big Ten right here on Metropol TV, and I'm your host, Nina Shiban. Let the countdown continue. So for the seventh consecutive time, interest rates on loans are set to remain unchanged for another 2 months. This follows the decision by the Central Bank of Kenya's Monetary Policy Committee to retain the CBK's key lending rate at 9%. In a statement, the MPC has said that it made the decision in view of the prevailing stability in inflation rates and the foreign exchange markets. The rate-setting committee further says credit to the private sector grew by 6.3% in the 12 months to August compared to 6.1% in July. Now, the MPC held its sitting against the backdrop of the National Assembly's recent decision to block the National Treasury's proposal to end interest rate caps on loans. On the other hand, CBK Governor Dr. Patrick Njoroge has said the current interest capping regime is damaging the economy, adding that a large section of the population in business has been locked out of credit over the last 2 years of the implementation of interest rate that the caps on loans. The clock is ticking. You have until 5 p.m. on Monday to hand in any old 1,000 shilling notes in your possession, or else all that money will be turned into valueless paper. That's the ultimatum issued by the Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, Dr. Patrick Njoroge, who has said that the 30th of September 2019 deadline for the withdrawal of the old 1,000 shilling notes remains unchanged. Though the CBK has raised an alarm that over an increase in cash purchases of wheat in Narok County, there is suspected to be an attempt to sanitize dirty money. But even as the deadline approaches, there are mixed views as to whether businesses and individuals alike are ready to clear their tills and wallets of the old notes. Now, while some say the government's 3 months changeover period was sufficient, others are asking the government to extend the changeover by up to a month. We spoke to Collins Aloch, who's a lawyer and economic analyst. Let's listen in to what he had to say. Financial services firm Sunland Kenya has joined the growing list of companies in Kenya that are cutting back their payrolls in order to remain profitable. The management of insurance firm Sunland Kenya announced a voluntary early retirement scheme targeted at employees that are aged 50 years that will run until the 4th of October. According to Sunland Kenya's Group Chief Executive Officer Patrick Tumbo, the scheme is only open to employees of Sunland Insurance Arm and not any other subsidiaries. As part of the voluntary early retirement package, the company is offering a severance pay equivalent to 1 month's salary for every 3 years of service, compensation for unused leave days, as well as a 30% loan rebate on the balance of any outstanding staff loans such as mortgages and car loans. Although the company did not disclose how many employees are targeted by the scheme, the CEO says should the voluntary early retirement package strategy fail, retrenchment will be the next step that the firm will take. The voluntary early retirement scheme is among other strategies that the organization will employ to save the company about 200 million shillings in costs. It is noteworthy that last month, listed non-banking financial services firm Sunland Kenya announced that it had turned around from a loss-making position to make a half-year pre-tax profit of 937 million shillings. Its staff costs, however, grew by 26% in 2018 to 943 million shillings, up from 746 million shillings in 2017. The company is restructuring its business at a time when Kenya's insurance industry is in a downturn that has been insurance penetration levels dip to 15-year low of 2.4% in 2018 from 2.7% in 2017, a decline that Sunland Kenya's CEO partly blames on the lack of innovative insurance products in the local market. This week marked a bitter turn for Mumias Sugar Company as KCB Kenya, which is one of the company's biggest creditors, moved to place Mumias Sugar under receivership. In a statement, the bank confirmed that it placed the state-owned sugar miller under receivership, and I quote, to protect its assets and to their best extent maintain its operations, unquote. The management and directors of the sugar company were instructed to submit a statement of the company's affairs by the 9th of October. In a public notice published in one of the local dailies, Mumias Sugar Company's receiver manager P.V. Rao has instructed Mumias management and directors to hand over all assets of the company, including motor and commercial vehicles as well as office equipment. At the same time, none of the company's directors, shareholders, employees will be authorized to transact any business on behalf of Mumias Sugar Company without express written consent from the receiver. Let's take a look at what led the sugar company to its current position and what lies ahead for the company that was once the largest sugar miller in Kenya. Finally, in our top story on the Big Ten, we turn the focus to Kenya's top export earner, and that's the tea industry. Players in the industry are facing a litany of issues that risk lowering earnings, issues ranging from low prices to the imposition of sanctions on Iran, which is among the emerging export markets that Kenya is reaching out to. Here are some of the issues facing Kenya's tea industry. All right, so to clarify further on Kenya's tea industry, with me in studio is Edward Mudebo, who is the Managing Director of the East African Tea Trade Association. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. I'd like to start off with taking a big picture of Kenya's tea industry. How is the outlook for the tea industry? Is it gloomy?
At the moment, generally the declined prices and the low returns have affected the small-scale farmers and the multinationals whose core business is tea. So the prices have not done well for the industry lately. And this turns out to be a cyclical trend after every 5 years. So the last of this was in 2014, and previously before that was in the 2009. So every 5 years, generally there's this kind of trend which plays out.
All right. For those maybe out there who do not understand, could you just look deeper into it? What are the main issues that are affecting the tea industry? You've said declining prices, and you've said that this is something that occurs after every 5 years. The question is why?
Generally, when prices dip, then some of the would-be key players get discouraged as they move out of it or reduce their participation. They leave out others to continue with the trend. Of course, then generally the fewer who are there with a reduced production end up realizing better prices for what they are taking. So it plays out that way. But the key issues here, the high cost of production. Internally, we have the high cost of production, which now leaves the margins very minimal for the farmers and the key players who are the multinationals. The main factor right now is the high volumes of tea we are currently facing. This was at 350 million in 2012. The following year it went up to it went up to 420 million, then 432 million, and currently, in 2018, we are looking at 492 million kilograms of tea. So you can see that trend in itself. The sporadic rise in production is not commensurate with the consumption rates. So we have a surplus, net surplus. The point is, when you have so much in the market and the consumption does not match up with the production, then there is a surplus. The prices are bound to fall. So that is where we are at the moment. It's not about any other aspect. It's about the volumes, which are quite high. The volumes are quite high. Quite high.
All right, and there's been a lot of talk around the Iran sanctions. Could you just bring us up to speed? How is Iran connecting with the tea production?
Iran is one of the other promising countries, would say. When Kenya has been relying on 5 key markets who actually take up about 78% of the market share.
All right.
That is, we're too dependent of the 5 countries. The rest of the world shares the 22%. That tells you the dependency we've had. That's not good for the country and for the African region as such. So what I'm demonstrating here is that if you're looking at Pakistan taking 38% of the market share, then it's followed by Egypt, UK, United Arab Emirates, and Sudan. Those take 78% of the market share. Now, what is happening is those countries, ironically, have a problem or a challenge or another currently, with Pakistan having the devaluation. Then we have Brexit on the UK.
Yes.
Then we have Egypt. The availability of hard currency is a challenge. Sudan, until recently, had turmoil. We are aware of the change of leadership.
Yes.
So all these are played out against the Kenyan tea market, because those have been the dependable consumers of our teas. Now for Iran, comes in because Iran has a potential, just like you would talk about Egypt and Pakistan. One, because of its populace, and two, because of their liking for high quality tea. They are ready to pay. Challenge has been, how do you get your funds? The Mombasa tea auction trades in dollars, but the US has placed sanctions on Iran. So even if you are dealing with Iran, even if the commodity tea is an unreliable commodity, how do you get paid? The challenge is which bank will want to deal with you. So we have challenges of even those who are dealing with tea, or which is an agricultural commodity and an unallowable commodity, getting paid. So to that end, it also enhances our challenges in terms of opening up the markets. And the more markets we open up will also help us in raising our price negotiation with other parts of the world.
All right. Properly understood. Now, moving away from that, you've proposed the re-establishment of an independent board to manage the tea industry. Yes. Why is this?
That was a trend we had in 2012, before 2012 and prior to that. We had a powerful, strong, recognized tea board of Kenya. That is the trend in Sri Lanka. We have a Sri Lanka tea board. In India, we have India tea board. We are, and in those countries, in fact, tea has been relegated and as a ministry, a functional ministry of tea, and rubber in the case of Sri Lanka. In India, they've recognized tea is an exclusive ministry over and above the Ministry of Agriculture. In Kenya, instead of us enhancing, we are relegating it to a department under the Agriculture and Food Authority, mixed up with other commodities which are ailing. That is not fair. We need to recognize the contribution of the tea sector. It is to this end that we would like to appeal to government to reconsider us having a tea board of Kenya. But that will come out if the bill that is in Parliament goes through. And we'd really like parliamentarians to support that bill, of course with amendments. We've come up with a memorandum to Parliament seeking for certain changes to be made. We want to have a board constituted comprising of the industry sector players, the main central government, the county governments, and the majority of that board of 11 board members, 6 actually should come from the private sector, 5 from the main government and county governments. That will be able to play out. That was the case before.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, apart from having the, or rather proposing to have the re-establishment of an independent board, what proposals have you made to keep Kenya's tea industry on an even keel?
One area we have is that we need to relook at the tax regime. Currently, the taxes from farm to cup in the tea sector accounts for about 37. We're looking at 37 taxes. That's quite high. But majorly so, even if others have to be maintained, because ultimately taxes or levies of one kind have to be paid. The key one is VAT. We export 95% of the tea, which for good cause is not taxed. And that's good. It makes our teas competitive out there. But we only consume 5%. Why can't the government consider tea as a food item and a beverage and therefore exempt tea from VAT? That's been the case in Tanzania. So what makes us very uncompetitive, and that explains why our consumption of tea in Kenya is quite low. Our per capita consumption of tea is just about 500 grams. Yet in countries like Pakistan, it's about 2 kilograms.
Which
Turkey,
is high, of course, yes.
Yeah, 2 kilograms. Ireland, 2 kilograms. So we produce the best quality tea, don't consume our own tea, and expect high prices. We should start. Charity begins at home.
Yes.
India produces 1.2 billion kilograms of tea, but they consume 1 billion kilograms of tea and only export 200 million kilograms of tea. So you can see the kind of disparities we have. So that's the core area we're looking at. We need also to have incentives, certain incentives for importation of peppers and machinery for tea. Those are but some of the areas. We need to have a common user facility, possibly in Mombasa to start with, whereby it can encourage more people to participate in the sector. So government has a lot to do in terms of revamping this important sector.
All right. Well, I'd like to say thank you very much. I wish you all the best when it comes to matters in improving the tea sector. That was Edward Modibo, who is the Managing Director of the East Africa Tea Trade Association. Now, it's about that time. It's exactly 9 p.m. or maybe a minute before 9. So it's time for us to say good night. That's it for the Big Ten this week. My name is Nina Shaban. Hopefully, I'll be seeing you next week for another episode of the Top 10 leading stories that are going to be there all through the week. Enjoy the rest of your night. Remember, it's Friday. Please do not drink and drive.